Hey guys, what's going on? It's Blake Ruffino from Are You Serious Sports. And this AYS short is brought to you by betonline.ag. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to bet on all your sporting action. Get over there today by using your mobile device and use the promo code BELIEVE for a 50% welcome deposit. BLEAV. That's BLEAV. Anything and everything you want to place bets on, BetOnline has for you. Prop bets, parlays, or you just want to bet the money line, they have it for you. It's the best place that I go and the one place that I go for all my sporting action when it comes to betting. Again, it's betonline.ag. Betonline.ag. Are not live? I don't know what that feels like. Just kidding. Just kidding. But welcome. That's the inside joke, obviously, for all of us people who are a part of or listen or watch the live shows from AYS. Normally, my tagline is when we open up is, we are live. But nevertheless, we are here in a pre-recorded show, because we do got some things to talk about, especially before the bad rains come. It's about to get bad out there, y'all. It's about to get really bad out there. So, nevertheless, we do got some things to talk about. We did do our live show last night, and we were unable to talk about Jameis Winston and the Saints. If you missed it today already, as we're recording, Jameis Winston formally announced from the New Orleans Saints that he is back on a 2-year, $28 million deal. And I just kind of wanted to talk on Jameis a little bit, right? Like I told you that once we got past the Sean Payton era, we would start talking more about the Saints. We've had guys like John Hendricks on here. We talked a lot about Deshaun Watson. But I think it's now time we obviously need to talk a little bit more about Jameis Winston and these New Orleans Saints. So I wanted to go, and Jameis and the Saints deserved a little bit more than just a normal small segment that we may have to allot to or set aside to on our live show. I thought it needed a little bit more of a deeper dive, right? So I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, social media, guests, hosts, whatever you may want to call it, talking about Jameis and, yeah, the Saints are bringing back Jameis. It's kind of blah. It's kind of meh. Is Jameis even really that good? And so it's funny to me to hear and see everybody talking about that, because when I start looking into Jameis Winston and what he did for the Saints last season, I'm a little bit I don't want to say taking back. I mean, Jameis didn't do something miraculous. I mean, he didn't change the game for the New Orleans Saints. But once you start really going back and re-looking at this team, you watch the film, you saw what Jameis did in the 7 games that he played, and what the Saints were doing, or the lack thereof of what the Saints were able to do offensively, what they surrounded him with, the offensive line being hurt, Alvin Kamara, and how the running game wasn't really going when Jameis was the starter. There's a lot to dive into. When it comes to Jameis Winston. A lot of people, and we had this discussion in Twitter Spaces for whatever it's worth, and some said that the Saints should go after Baker Mayfield or maybe even a Jimmy Garoppolo, where I wouldn't necessarily completely disagree, because how Jimmy has done getting his team to the NFC Championship game and other things. I still think Jameis has a lot to prove. Now, Jameis, this past January, turned 28 years old. He's still a very, very young guy. He's still a very, very young quarterback. Jameis had games last season where he did really well. I mean, I could go to the Packers game where he went 14 of 20, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. But for whatever reason, even though the Saints were displaced, even though they had to play in Jacksonville, I have to take it away from Jameis. At least that's what social media is telling me to do. Blake, that's an outlier. You can't do that. It's funny because what if in 5 games, you have 2 games where you have 2 5 touchdown performances and only 1 interception. So in 2 games, you have 10 touchdowns and 1 interception. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that Jameis Winston is reinventing the wheel. I'm not even sitting here saying that Jameis is the best quarterback in the division in the NFC South, because obviously that's going to go to Tom Brady. But is he number 2 right now? You're damn right he is. I mean, is Marcus Mariota a better quarterback now that the Atlanta Falcons have signed Marcus Mariota? Is he a better quarterback than Jameis Winston? No, he's not. Neither is Sam Darnold. But I felt as if Jameis got a lot of heat last year, and I don't want this to be a Jameis Winston apology tour or me defending Jameis Winston, but I really don't know what others have seen in Jameis when it comes to a negativity surrounding him. Did you know that in majority of the games that Jameis Winston started last year for the New Orleans Saints, Alvin Kamara did not rush for 5 yards per carry? It's around 4.2, 4 to 4.5. Jameis was actually the one that was averaging 5 yards per carry. Let's go to Seattle. 19 of 35, 222 yards, 1 touchdown, 8 rushes, 40 yards. Won you that game with his feet. The biggest target that he had in that game obviously was Alvin Kamara. Kamara had 10 catches in that game. The outside weapons were failing him. You remember the Traquan incident on the sidelines. You remember that, where he's running the wrong route, doesn't know where to be. He's stopping before the ball gets to him, not knowing what he needs to do. You remember that incident. Jameis Winston did not have the appropriate weapons on the outside that the Saints have had and should have, especially after they're coming off of doing things and clearing space in the cap to be able to go out there and get predominantly, maybe even just average pieces. I'm not saying Marquez Callaway is not average, but he hasn't proven to be a good player right now. Jameis going to Seattle and winning that game when you're rushing, when the rushing game is not getting going. Alvin Kamara in that game only rushing for close to 2.5 yards per carry, and you're having to get him touches by throwing him the ball and getting 10 catches to him. Jameis did not have a lot of help around him, having to use his legs to get things going. And, then I go down and I look at the Giants game. Now, I was at that game, and it was a tough loss. A very, very tough loss for Jameis. But everybody talks about the interception late or the interception in that game, but it didn't come from Jameis Winston. It came from Taysom Hill. In that game, Jameis Winston went 74% completion percentage for 226 yards and a touchdown. Taysom was the one that threw that pick, not Jameis. What's interesting to me is when I look at these stats, when I go back and watch the film and watch what Jameis Winston did, I see the very funny thing about in his game, which looks to be maturity and growth. Jameis Winston taking care of the football, not being careless with the football. That one thing of Jameis being careful with the ball and not turning it over and not always putting the ball in harm's way shows maturity for me. Now, Jameis is going to have to come in here, even though that he tore his ACL a season ago. He's going to have to come back into this and to the Saints and into this division and show that he could lead the Saints to a division. And if not a division, at least to a playoff or a playoff berth. But let's not sit here and act like Jameis did not do good things last season. It's naive and it's stupid. I look at other games like when the Saints went up to Washington, and the Saints legitimately did not ask him to do much, and he goes 13 of 21 for 128 yards. Or no, that's the Patriots. But going up to Washington, excuse me, we'll get to the Patriots too. In probably his worst game as a Saint. Think about this. The worst game for Jameis Winston last season when they played Washington, because he went 15 of 30, 279 yards, 4 touchdowns and a pick. The deep bomb to Deontay Harris. Callaway having 4 catches, 85 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Are you seeing what I'm seeing at this point? I mean, do I need to show you the stats to show you how good Jameis Winston was a season ago? If him going 50% is his worst game and we're having 4 touchdowns, with all due respect, sign me up. Now, I know that Sean was a little conservative with Jameis. I know that Sean was a little timid with Jameis. But, guys, let's not act like there's an outlier when you're having 4 touchdown performances in the NFL. It doesn't matter that it's happening against Washington. You did it against Green Bay. Green Bay's a playoff team. By the way, you were displaced in one of those. Then you go on the road for the other. Going up against another playoff team, the New England Patriots. Going 13 of 21, 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. Are you seeing a pattern here of no interceptions? Now, Jameis did throw 3 picks and 14 touchdowns, a 7-to-1 ratio, or really a not a 7-to-1 ratio, but that'd be a 7 to 1.2 ratio, maybe, or something like that. Jameis is maturing. A young quarterback at 28 years old. Now, what we haven't talked about a lot is Deshaun Watson, obviously going into Cleveland, getting the $230 million guarantee. But as Nick Underhill and guys like John Hendricks is reporting, the Colts were legitimately going hard after Jameis Winston. Jameis wants to be here. But if there was a Ruffino's rants in this segment, if there was a Ruffino's rants that I would want to go into, is that now that you've cleared the space, you got to go get him help. By the way, Alvin Kamara could be facing a 6 to 8 game suspension next season. Is Marquez Callaway your second best option in that offense? And then I hear from people, well, Blake, you still have Mark Ingram. Guys, Mark Ingram's not enough. Alvin Kamara is a better back than Mark Ingram is, and they couldn't get the running game going at times. Andres Pete has had a history of being injured. You know, it seems to me that we look so much at Jameis Winston and we don't look at what the front office is doing by not getting him weapons. Now, do I think that they're going to go out there and get him weapons? Absolutely. You would be naive to think that they're not going out there to get him weapons. But the bottom line is this. Jameis is showing maturity. And when you have a quarterback that's showing maturity and that showed flashes of being really good last year, we remember in Green Bay, we remember in Washington, the big long passes to Deontay Harris, leading your team in Seattle when he didn't have any in a very bad inclement weather game, leading your team to a victory. By the way, you only scored 1 touchdown in that game. Came from Jameis Winston in Seattle. I'm not saying that Jameis Winston is a top 20 quarterback at this point. What I would tell you is he's trending that way. And if Jameis stays healthy, in my opinion, based off what we saw last season and the maturity that we've seen from Jameis over the last 2 seasons since being in New Orleans, guys, I think that he could work himself into being a franchise quarterback. He's got the talent. He's got the skill set. I don't care what he's doing on Twitter and the workouts. I don't care what he's doing on TikTok. I don't care that he's bouncing on a ball, rehabbing. I don't care that he's posting it on social media. I don't care that people are making fun of him. The one thing that Jameis always needed to work on was what was going on between his eyes and are going in between his head and maturing. He has the physical tools, and he's doing that. He is maturing. He's not the only quarterback that goes through things like that. Baker Mayfield's another one. Would you replace him with Baker Mayfield? I say you don't. Baker Mayfield also, it seems to be at times off the field to have some issues. But Jameis is riding that ship. Jameis isn't the only quarterback that has those issues, though. I wonder if they're going to let him a little bit out of his shell. I would be okay with Jameis throwing 30 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. I'd be okay with him throwing 35 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. Guys, you make the playoffs if that happens. you make the playoffs. Sean Payton was a great play caller. People try to convince me that so is Pete Carmichael. We'll see. But I have games of 4 touchdowns. I have games against 5 touchdowns against 2 playoff teams. I have an offensive line that was banged up and injured, and your running back's not getting 5 yards per carry. You're legitimately throwing it out to Alvin Kamara, and you're saying, hey, Alvin's out there somewhere. Let me just chunk that sucker. That's how I feel about it. Now, I don't know how Jameis feels or how he felt about the Saints going after Deshaun Watson. It's at this point, it seems to be a moot point. But Jameis has still to prove, not only on the field, but he has to prove to that front office that he's the guy. Guys, for whatever reason, I have a feeling he might. Now, we could be sitting back in the next season, and we can look back to this video, and you were like, Blake, you're just an idiot. Maybe I am. But I like when I see a player start maturing. And he's a young guy. Guys, he's 28 years old. He's 28 years old. There's a situation where you could have the next 7 years, you could have 7 years of a very damn good Jameis Winston. Do I think right now Jameis Winston can lead you to a Super Bowl? No. No, I don't. But if he continues to progress, maybe he could. All right. Want to give a shout out to our good friends over at betonline.ag. That's what these AYS shorts are for. BetOnline, we appreciate it. Guys, we'll appreciate you. We'll hopefully see you tonight if the weather permits itself. So, all right. See you soon. Peace out, Girl Scouts.